Welcome to another episode of Beauty and the Biohacker, where we explore the latest tools and trends in self-care, aesthetics, and peak performance to help you live your most beautiful life from the inside out. I am your co-host, Katie Moore, the biohacking side of Beauty and the Biohacker. I've got 3 years of experience self-experimenting in the space of health and wellness technology. And my mission is to help you achieve success without sacrificing your health or happiness. I do so on my YouTube channel, Katie Type A.
And I am the beauty side of Beauty and the Biohacker. Welcome if this is your first time tuning in. My name is Rachel. I'm a board-certified aesthetic nurse specialist with nearly 20,000 procedures under my belt and over 10 years in the industry of aesthetics and rejuvenation. I love helping people look good and feel good using the latest and greatest clinic-backed technology available today. But I also love helping people figure out what they could do at home and in clinic through virtual consultations available at rachelvarga.ca.
And in today's episode, we welcome our very special guest, Landra Bickley Eliopoulos. Now, she is a UCLA-trained mindfulness facilitator, people and leadership consultant. She's passionate about developing people through mindfulness practices, helping them learn to manage stress in a skillful way, adopt a growth mindset, which is something we all could use these days, build emotional intelligence, and cultivate resilience. Now, Landra blends 20 years and more of leadership experience from top companies like Target, Lululemon, and One Medical, with 15 years of direct experience with embodiment practices like yoga, mindfulness, meditation, and somatic experiencing. And we will get into all of those in just a moment. She's also the founder of Mindful HR, where she leads mindfulness programs, leadership coaching, and people development. So welcome to the show, Landra. We are so excited to have you.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here with you both.
So this is such a unique time at the end of the year as we start to think about New Year's resolutions, as we really start to kind of turn within and think and reflect on the year past. And there have been a lot of crazy changes for so many of us. So I know that for me, diving into a more meditation, and mindfulness practice has been helpful in guiding me through this time. And I am just so curious if, you could kind of walk us through your first experience with meditation and what was your particular impetus for starting?
Yeah, it's interesting. I actually have to take a step back and kind of talk about my entry point through to meditation was actually through the door of yoga. I was somebody that, you mentioned my bio. I've been in HR for a long time, kind of just who I am for my friends and my family is give, give, give. And I was starting to hit a point of burnout and realizing I wasn't taking care of myself. And a lot of that kind of stress, I was living a lot in like my head more so than in my body. And so in a yoga practice, there's usually a little bit of time at the beginning and then at the end to kind of drop in and to be in more of that meditative state. And the more that I started paying attention to that, I was like, wow, I actually feel more calm. Like, oh, there's something happening here. And so it was probably about a good 10 years into my yoga practice that I actually then got curious in meditation and started literally just finding, meditations online, finding things through, different recordings, different people that were leading. And so, yeah. And when it was hard. It's not an easy thing to do. And, over time, I started doing teacher training in yoga. And then again, I was like, I really want to learn more about mindfulness and really didn't have the intention of teaching. It was just kind of more for myself. And through all that I learned and that, I was really realizing like there's a big benefit here. Really, all the things you had mentioned in my bio, right? Being able to cultivate resiliency, realizing that I actually can, be able to respond versus be in reaction all the time. Taking that pause to kind of come back home and kind of gather myself back in my body and not live in my head quite as much. And yeah, so that's really kind of what brought me to the practice of meditation.
I love how you said moving away from just being in the headspace and becoming more embodied. And I think I have a really cool question for you, Landra. But what I will share through my, 10 years of working with clients, helping them get the skin that they want using various in clinic and at home options like
Yeah.
lasers, different peels, injectables, other non surgical and sometimes surgical options. So there's a subset of clients I work with that are extremely vibrant, and they definitely do have a type of meditation spiritual practice. This is a non-negotiable in the clients that I work with that really have that, je ne sais quoi. They walk into a room and you're like, what do they have? I want to get me some of that, right? That's what I
Yeah.
like to call radiance. And that's really actually my true reason why I think I'm here, is to kind of unpack that. So I'm curious, Landra, what inspired you to transition from practicing meditation to teaching it? And, really, was there a particular teacher or transformative moment that helped to facilitate this shift in your work?
Yeah, there are a couple things. First and foremost, my meditation teacher, my primary teacher is Jill Satterfield. And she's based right now in Berkeley, but had been living in New York for many years. I was lucky enough to find her just when she transitioned out west. Um, yeah, and I really think it was, the embodiment piece. It's not just the meditation, it's in the movement, realizing that mindfulness can be more than the meditation and kind of a way of being. Um, and I had a really small group. I was really lucky. I think there was 9 of us that went through the training. So a lot of time practice teaching, a lot of, feedback in the moment and realizing, I think, why I teach, it actually keeps me honest and in my practice. This is something that if I don't practice, I don't think it makes me that great of a teacher. I think people can kind of sense, and kind of either connect with it or not. So that was one thing that kind of why I like to do it. And then the other thing, at the same time, I was still working actually in a healthcare technology company, and people knew that was who I was. Actually, sometimes I would teach meditation when the opportunity arose. And there was one particular moment where we were actually going through some layoffs, and I had to deliver some tough news and be with some people. And one of the women, when I was meeting her with her individually, she said, I know that you do the meditation stuff. I'm really overwhelmed. Can you just help me right now? Can we breathe? And that to me was like, wow, there's a value here in bringing this into the workplace. And I think the other kind of part of my story too was being able to fully integrate who I was and who I am, both, when I'm not at work technically, right? And then just like being able to bring my full self to work. So yeah, I think both of those moments just really, and I have chills as I'm saying it right now, that really.
I love that. It's
Mhm.
pretty cool moving from practitioner to teacher. And I've gone through that as well. And sometimes when you get to the point where you should be teaching stuff, it's almost like people come to you and they're like, I want you to teach me this, this, this. And you kind of can have that imposter syndrome. It's like, oh, am I really ready? It's like,
Yeah.
I felt ready. I definitely did. And I was just curious if you kind of felt that as well. It's like it was just the natural progression in your practice.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's exactly what you said. It was a natural progression. I was ready for it. People were kind of calling me to it even kind of before I felt like I was ready. So those moments that I really have to, and usually what brings you into imposter syndrome, at least that I experience, it's we get up here,
Mhm.
right? We're not
Gotta get more in the heart space, like
dropping
you said,
in.
your body. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. So recognizing that and then doing something about it. Yeah.
I love what you said about bringing your meditation practice into the corporate workplace. And so, truth be told, I came from a corporate background. My fiance works for a corporate company, and that's actually how we connected
Yeah.
initially. And there is, for a while, there was this, drive to just succeed and work tirelessly. And managers are not given the kind of training that you might need to be able to deal with really difficult situations. People don't just come in and they're not robots, right? Like they have families and backgrounds and, there's family emergencies. How do you unpack all of that as a manager, as somebody who comes in and needs to show up for work every day? So I commend you for the brainstorm of an idea to bring mindfulness and make it accessible into the workplace. And I know that is really the platform of Mindful HR. So can you kind of walk us through what your company does and how far are you able to reach people, especially given the circumstances of the pandemic these days?
Yeah. So Mindful HR, I started it as a way to kind of bring in my own consulting. And HR is quite broad. And what I was recognizing, I've done so many things, but really recognizing where I get the most out of it is really the development of others. So I wanted to spend my career doing more of that. And yeah, so whether it be leadership development, whether it be designing manager training, um, whoever typically, and it's great being clear about who I'm interested in working with, but the people that tend to find me tend to really be companies that are more people focused. They're not like, oh, well, I guess we need to have HR, so I guess we'll call, they're like, no, we really want to do right by our people, and we need to give them tools. So that's how it started. And then, as I progressed into more teaching mindfulness and meditation, I'm like, there's some room here to kind of bring some programming. So I will sometimes, and that's how you and I met, I'm leading meditation in corporate settings. I was pre-pandemic sometimes doing team offsites. So we'd gather and actually it was blended some mindfulness stuff, self-awareness, emotional intelligence with some leadership work as well too. And kind of sometimes goals that they had for their quarter gathering, that sort of thing. And yeah, how it's changed in the pandemic now, it's now we're all in these little boxes and we're in the space that we work and we live is all really compressed. So I'm seeing in the corporate spaces a lot more companies reaching out, and also more and more people showing up. I tend to kind of, my audience tends to be people that are newer to meditation, and I love that. And it usually is those people that are like, I've never done this before, so it's kind of like I'm getting a lot more of those people, I think, than I have in the past. They're coming with a sense of curiosity, and also kind of a little bit of like some skepticism too, I would say, kind of a blend.
You must love the companies that reach out to you that are wanting to incorporate mindfulness into their HR services. That must be like a big green flag for actually a company that you want to support,
Yeah.
which I think is wonderful. And I actually have a number of clients who do HR work. And I've, asked them a couple times, what is it like for people right now? They're going through big transitions. So you are really in a very wonderful role to be able to help those that maybe have never taken them time to develop
Yeah.
strategies to help them evolve, to help them become resilient. So I don't think you necessarily understand the impact that you might be
Mm.
having on people's lives, that especially when you mentioned programming, we are heavily programmed in this day and age. I mean, what are we being shown on our phones? That is designed for us to see things in a certain way. So I
Yeah.
just think it's absolutely beautiful, the work that you're doing. So my question for you is, I've been doing deep psychological work for the last 10 years with a fantastic psychologist. She's actually relatively famous, has worked with, all sorts of people from all over the world for a very long time. And so I'm very well versed in, many types of meditation. And I'm just really curious, is there a particular style of meditation you prefer practicing on your own versus when you're teaching?
Yeah. Yeah, it for the most part, I would say I'm at the point where I'm doing more open awareness practice. So meaning that it's really just allowing kind of whatever's I'm noticing to just be there, and kind of whatever grabs my attention as long as it's in the present moment. Now, I'm sure you ladies both meditate, you both know, like it's not about shutting the mind off. It's not like all of a sudden there's no thoughts. We get lost in them. I get lost in them. And then it's like, finding my way back. But what I teach typically is more, it's guided. it usually is instruction that, helps people come back to a particular anchor. Lately, I've been talking a lot about, especially in the workplace, the meditation piece, I talked about the embodiment. We talk a lot about using the body. And in the workplace, we don't really talk about our bodies. And I know sometimes I'm just thinking about that. That could be a little bit like, what? Why are we doing this? So I've been educating people that the reason why we come back to our body is that our body is always in the present moment. It doesn't have the ability to time travel like our mind does. So, yeah, I tend to kind of work with whatever's in the environment.
Sure. So the way that I practice is body, mind, spirit, energy, all of that encompassing, whether, it's interdimensional, whatever. I mean, the sky's the limit with this, but what do you do? So for example, what's your morning and evening routine? What does that look like? What does
Yeah.
your specific practice look like?
Yeah. Yeah. Usually, I start out on my mornings with it. And there are days where sometimes I'm not able to sit in the morning because of whatever goes on. So then I will make it an evening practice. Yeah, I have the same chair that I sit in. I, typically like to sit with my legs cross-legged. I usually kind of do a little bit of like movement, rocking the body, whether it's a stretch, kind of, getting into um, kind of finding my zone. I also, the other thing too is the ritual I like to kind of couple it with is drinking warm lemon water in the morning. So those are kind of two things. And that's the other thing I kind of tell people to do is create like those if then habits. If I have my lemon water, that's a cue, then I will meditate. So it's kind of like that conditioning. Um, and then I usually will allow the breath to become a little more expansive, get curious about what my breath feels like, if there's one particular place I'm noticing it the most. And then I don't know how to say it. I just kind of let myself from the breath wander on into whatever's right around me.
So how long does your personal practice last, for example?
I do 30 minutes. There are some occasions where it's shorter. There's some occasions I played with making it 45 minutes, but 30 minutes has been the good amount of time that I don't stray away from doing it.
Gotcha. And where are some of your favorite places to meditate and why? So, for example, I personally love to find places in nature where I just feel like
Yeah.
the energetics are slightly different than other places. Some people can definitely feel that a little bit more than others. So I'm just curious, your take on the places where you meditate and why.
You said it. It's nature. Yeah, absolutely. There's a park just up the street from me. I'm here in San Francisco, and I can see from this space Alcatraz and the Bay Bridge, but it's a really special place. You look around, and there are just a variety of trees and flowers. Um, and so even before I say I stop and meditate, it's kind of mindfully walking through that space and taking everything in through my senses, from what I see through my sense of sight, but also what do I hear? What do I smell? Um, yeah,
So
that's
you
probably,
find that you can kind of meditate anywhere.
yeah, I do. I do. And I think, in that space, it's usually, my eyes aren't closed. I usually just kind of cast the gaze down a bit because it's an urban city environment. It's a little bit hard, right? To just blindly close your eyes.
Yeah,
I have,
it's crazy. Like for me
yeah.
to get to that point where I can fully empty, I literally have to drive 3 hours out of cell reception in my Jeep, take my bear spray, my air horn, all that
Mm,
stuff, have all the gear, and really have no sound of humans, right? So cars, dogs, airplanes,
yeah.
traffic, things like that. So that's a little extreme. And it's so different for everybody. But I've had to cultivate not having to do that because of certain restrictions. And so that's been interesting in my practice as well. I was just curious if you've kind of gone to those extremes where you have to take yourself out of certain situations in order to really empty yourself
Mm.
and then be able to recharge your batteries, if you will.
Yeah, when you're talking about that, that's definitely like a retreat. I've done many like 7 day has 7 has been the most, but even like 4 days silent retreats, and they're at retreat centers, that are fully in nature. Like you said, unplugged from modern society. I mean, it includes giving up the phone. It's an option, but I absolutely love it
That's the best
because
part. It's like
I know,
no
right?
EMFs or other people's EMFs or Wi-Fi or Bluetooth. I'm like, oh, I feel so much better when that happens.
And it's interesting then to notice the impulse of
Mhm.
but why is that? Oh, I don't really need it, and so kind of then it's like the deprogramming a little bit of everything that we do in a daily life. Yeah.
Mhm. Well, I certainly want to talk to you about the, benefits, both physical and mental, of
Okay.
meditation. But first, I just had a question that I have always secretly wanted to ask a meditation teacher and have never had the chutzpah to do, but I'm feeling the impulse right now. So, as you know, I'm a biohacker
Yeah.
and I love the idea of going out and just being able to drop into nature, but I get a little help. So I've got about 3 devices that I use to create neurostimulation, bone conduction technology, binaural beats, you name it. It is the cutting edge devices that are supposed to help you get there fast.
Yeah.
So my question to you, and I'm going to ask you to answer openly and honestly, and I'm not going to ask you to speak for the entire meditation community, but maybe you can give me a sense of, what do meditation teachers really think about this? Do they think it's a watered down version of meditation?
Mm.
And feel free to be open and transparent, because no, don't hold anything back.
Yeah. No, I think that, any meditation is good meditation. I think that, for some people, mindfulness doesn't work, doesn't connect with them, right? There's mantra based, there's so many different types. I think we're at the point now with technology, and I haven't spent time dabbling in that area. When you and I talked, I was like, I am curious. But I think people, whether you are say you're data driven, or you just really want the feedback right away, or to kind of see the statistics, wonderful. I think that, if that helps you open the door and kind of find your way there, then I don't think there's anything wrong with it. Now, mindfulness definitely has us look at where we have attachments and where do we have aversion. So I think if it's okay, I can only meditate if I have this device, that might be something, right, where we're kind of overly rotated on it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I hear you on that. And I think that, the design of these devices, the intention might be pure, but I do question the dependency that people, including myself, get, when it comes to needing these things to be able to reach that Zen-like state, right?
Yeah.
So I just thought this was kind of, a good jumping off point to really talk about why you're meditating to begin with. And I think
Mhm.
this is a great transition point to talk about some of the health benefits. I know you're a leading expert in this, and I'd love for you to, really tell me about, what are those physical changes we're going to see, and how long do you actually have to meditate? Do you need to be like a Buddhist monk meditating for 40 years, like Dave Asprey, in order to feel this impact? Or
Yeah.
can this happen in short, periods of time?
Or it's like you have to do cardio for at least 20 minutes before you start to burn fat.
Exactly. It's like we put these set time parameters on
Yeah.
ourselves, but is that really the point?
Right, right. Yeah, it's interesting. When you look at research that's been done on the effects of mindfulness, meditation specifically, I mean, it's still fairly in its infancy stage. I think around the late 90s is when you started to see a lot more research studies starting to take place. The other thing I would say too, and I know a lot of my teachers have cautioned me, and also in the teaching of it, is that, this isn't a cure-all, because, there's sometimes that too, oh, if I do this, then, which if there was something that would cure everything, I think we'd know it by now.
Or like that magic beauty cream that just all of a sudden gets rid of
Oh,
everything age related
yes.
overnight.
Yeah, just one application and you're good. Yeah, so, in the studies that they have done, they've seen, positive effects, whether it be on our immune system, whether it be on, the heart rate. So, finding our way out of a stress response, and, bringing down blood pressure. What's happening, what I think and I find really empowering, and I like to share with people, but what they're finding about what's happening to the brain is, over time, the hippocampus, which is the area responsible for our memory and our learning center, that gray matter starts to expand. And then the amygdala, which you probably have heard of before, that's that fight or flight also known as a reptilian brain. It's kind of like, look, there's danger, and living in modern society, we kind of anxiety, worry, and living in a pandemic year kind of brings us to that place. So consistent meditation over time starts to shrink that area.
Mm.
The other thing that happens, and that's right in here, is our prefrontal cortex. This is our area that helps us, the more that we meditate this, I guess, the stronger kind of essentially it becomes. And
Apparently mine is like super robust. So I've been told.
Amazing. So yeah, it helps you, which you probably know, be a little bit more responsive than in reaction. It starts to kind of, it's that impulse center. So you can kind of work with that a little bit. So back to the question that you also had too, is like, how often do we have to do this? There are studies that show, as long as there's consistency in the meditating, whether it be 8 weeks over 16 weeks, varied, I would say probably on the larger side, up to 20 minutes a day, you can start to see the effects. So 8 weeks, probably 20 minutes, 16 weeks, a little bit less time, which is, it's something just like anything, you create a habit, it definitely, over time will kind of compound and start to kind of pay us back and the benefits. But, I think more and more what I'm seeing is it's about the consistency. And, that's the other point too, that a lot of times people think, okay, I'm going to do this. And they go full on, I'm going to do 30 minutes a day, and they have no experience. And typically what happens is that they don't. And then they start to think that they're a failure, and then it's too hard and they can't do it. So starting off small, I think, is really big.
And I will share that I have, just personally, it might be nice for you guys to know this, that I actually have 2 different ways that I meditate. And one of them is my morning and evening routine, definitely addressing body, mind, spirit, energy, part of me asking for clearing, asking for protection, asking for upgrade, and also asking for grounding. So that's what I do morning and night. The first thing I do when I wake up, and then right before I go to bed, that's how I drift off. The other way that I meditate is I listen to these really cool, like 2-hour updates, right? So every month I work with a fantastic psychologist that every month she puts out these 2-hour updates. I literally go into this crazy altered state. I'll wake up at the end of it. It's like hypnosis. I'm like, what did I just listen to? And then I'll listen to those same tracks like even 2-3 times. And I won't recall ever hearing that information. But all I know is that I feel amazing. So those are 2 hours. And sometimes I'll even do 2 back to back. And just a tip, if you're flying, listening to some type of guided meditation track can be a really great way to just kind of like zonk out. I would always do that on flights. So I thought it might be just helpful just to share what different practices can look like. And it can be anywhere from, 3 minutes for me up to 2 hours times 2. So what are some of the physiological benefits of meditating? And also, feel free to nerd out a little bit. Well, this is the Beauty of the Biohacker podcast. Get super nerdy. Like, don't dumb it down. I really want you to kind of get into like the meat and bones of meditation, how you can all really benefit from it. How often we talked about frequency of meditating. For me, I'm going to say morning and night, at least twice a day. And the funny thing is, I do want to ask you this, what area of your life has changed the most as a result of meditation? And I will share that my aspects of life that improve with meditation is actually just the flow. And I find that just everything ends up working out for me in just the right way, just at the right time for me at that very moment. It's very interesting to observe.
Yeah, when you said that, it resonates with me too. I think that it's over time for me, it's built a deeper trust. And whether you call it the universe, God,
But also in
whatever's
our
there.
own inner guidance.
Yeah, and our own inner guidance too. It's like trusting, that own experience, and then kind of forces at play. Yeah, that's been huge. And I would think the other thing too, benefit that I've gotten as well, is a sense of compassion. The one thing that I realized, where I was finding that suffering of taking care of everybody else, there was something around not cultivating a sense of being my own best friend, essentially, is kind of what I've learned. And I would be so compassionate and say yes to all these things and do all these things for others, but wasn't doing that for me. And so, learning kind of just ways to take care of myself has been huge. And I think that also shows up in relationships. being able to, there are those people, we're human, we all have those, people that can kind of trigger us or to send us into a more reactionary place. So being aware of that, what are the cues in my body that, kind of tell me that, okay, I'm feeling that, right? And then to be able to take a pause, find that place to kind of, then come from a more balanced response. And sometimes the best response is none at all. So it just, depends over time.
I'm really curious if you have noticed some really interesting trends this year. And I do. I work with a pretty large patient population. And I've definitely noticed, we have something covering our mouths all the time.
Yeah.
I have observed absolutely a bit of an uptick in more nonverbal communication. So how awesome would it be if we had these workplaces where we are so in tune with ourselves and in tune with others that we can actually pick up what our employees and our clients need before they even say it. So whether that would be, developing some type of, nonverbal mind reading or becoming more psychic, if you will. Wouldn't that be the ideal workplace?
Oh my gosh, amazing. Yes.
Sorry to bring in the woo, but that's my job.
I love that. No, yeah, trends, going back to us being in these little boxes. I'm really aware that people are on camera quite often. So I do, and that's the other thing with the mindfulness piece. I give a lot of choice. So letting people know they actually can go off camera and they can do what they need to do to take care of themselves. I know that's been met with a big sigh of relief. And then of course there are those companies where the culture, not everybody comes on camera to begin with. So I've noticed that. And then the other thing, and I really do think this is the humanness is coming in, because now we're not just who I am at work. We actually are invited into each other's homes when we're online. And so now sometimes there's the kids that interrupt. There are the, furry friends that we have, and whatever, like the messiness of life. And so I think we're starting to kind of see people's full humanness, and I know some people, are working through some of that, of feeling. I've heard people, tell me in some, trainings in particular, where they're like, I feel like I'm failing. I'm not doing a good job, as I was before. So a lot of this comparison, right? And so that's kind of trends I've noticed. And so, in those moments, being able to share, like, are we doing our best? Because that's what counts. Let's not measure up to what, our best was pre-pandemic. Like we have to, invite in a little bit of grace and a little bit of compassion and kindness towards ourselves.
So I'm going to ask you a hard question.
Yeah.
Can we develop ESP in the workplace? Because that'd be pretty sweet.
That'd be awesome. I don't know.
Like when one of my coworkers like makes me a cup of coffee, I'm like, oh my gosh, I love you so much. Or like doing tasks for each other that we know someone's going to need some help with.
Yeah.
Like, is that something that you cultivate when you're doing mindful HR to allow us to take cues from others so that we can best serve them? And then in the, reciprocity, they'll be able to best serve us as well.
Definitely. I mean, I think anything's possible. I would love to be a part of helping work towards that and seeing it be a reality in our corporate cultures. And exactly what you were mentioning is really emotional intelligence, that ability to kind of, right?
We're going to get there.
We're going to get there. The ability, recognize it, and to be a little bit more altruistic, that we're not always about me. Mm-hmm. And I do feel the world is shifting. Some people are coming and like, right? Well, and some people are like, oh, I'm ready. But then there's some kicking and screaming. Mm-hmm. And then there's some that just really, it's not on the radar. And that's okay, right? We all kind of in our own time. Of course, I always want to hit the fast forward button.
Mm-hmm. And one of the things that you mentioned was like, for a lot of people in the workplace, they feel like, my home is now exposed and I'm not doing as great of a job. And a lot of it has to do with structure, right? There was a habitual nature to getting up, getting dressed, going to your workplace. And now that has dissipated for so many. So that being said, you bring structure in your 30-minute or hour-long meditation practices through Zoom. Do you find that has been helpful in cultivating more people to come to you in this time than you normally would see, out of a pandemic, because I feel like there's people craving any type of structure they can get. Heck, they'll show up for meetings, even if they're not even part of it. So are you starting to see a shift of more people coming because they're looking for that?
I am. Yeah. And that's been the silver lining. Most of the individuals I am servicing had been in person. And so now, with it being online, a lot of these companies are global. So they're opening it up, inviting the whole company, to join. So that's been beautiful. And, different time zones. There's one person in particular I think about, here I am teaching meditation on the West Coast and it's 12 o'clock. And this one individual, she's in India and it's bedtime. And she's coming. Her work day's already over, but she's coming. It's a benefit through her work. And she's coming to help unwind. And she's finding the benefits of helping her sleep better. So that's just been a huge benefit.
And I'm sure there's an element of connection too. You're not only providing guidance, but a familiar voice, and you're bringing a community together of people who all want the same exact thing. When you go to a meeting, there's a lot of differing voices and opinions, but here everyone's coming because they are looking to cultivate their meditation practice. So, in some ways it's like the best way to just get to that community is to show up, know?
You're right. The sense of community, I think, is huge. I think the other thing, wasn't that I underestimated it, but I'm really seeing the value in hearing people say it, is the silence. To just be and not have to say a darn thing, and so sometimes it's that silence at the beginning before, as we're waiting for people to join us, the gift of silence, guiding, but just, you've said in my meditations of, now I'm going to be silent for a few moments and let you kind of notice what you notice. And that just, I think, allows people to really just drop in a little bit more. And the other thing too, when people share sometimes at the very end, we start to realize that our experiences are actually the human experience. So it starts to normalize some of these feelings and some of the more negative discomfort feelings. And you just have to realize I'm not alone, because, then there's those people that, the opposite of what I mentioned, kids running in, trying to homeschool. Well, there's the people that are living alone and that are quite lonely sometimes.
And there's also that, especially for people who are a little type A like myself, this constant judgment of yourself in the practice. Like, am I doing this right? Is everybody else hearing these things? Am I not meditating in the right manner? And so you start to go down that rabbit hole. And in some ways, it's comforting to hear that you're not alone in the struggle of meditation. There are definitely a handful of days when I just feel like I've gotten in touch with myself, and I feel like I've, knocked it out of the park in meditation. And other days I just can't even get past my own thoughts. So it's refreshing that you do open up people to share their thoughts, because it's, sometimes it's a struggle, and it's nice to know that you're in the same kind of company, I guess, so to speak.
Very true. Yeah.
Would you say that people are meditating more or less, especially this year? I know for me, I have seriously had to upregulate how much meditation I'm doing in order to stay grounded, balanced, centered, and aligned in profound ways that I do need to. So I know for me personally, I have, and I'm just curious if you have, and also the clients that you work with.
Yeah, no, for sure. I'm seeing, gosh, my mom and her friends in their 70s are starting. This is a thing they thought, I don't know about all that. Now they're open to it. So I've seen that. The regulation piece, oh my gosh, absolutely. Whether, if I'm not meditating, it's kind of being aware of when I'm feeling ungrounded, what are those practices I come back to? And one very simple, I was talking to a girlfriend, she's a single mom, and I was like, I have no time. I was like, you want me to tell you what my practice was today? It was lying on the ground, literally on my back. I had my knees bent, and I just wanted to feel the support of knowing that the earth was somewhere below me, and those walks that we talked about, taking a bath at night, I also find too is a way to kind of, let go of the day. That is really kind of nourishing. Napping.
Red light therapy actually really does it for me. For my evening baths, when I have my red light therapy going on, it's like
Mm,
getting ready for the wind down for the end of the day. It's like Himalayan
yeah,
rock salt lamps everywhere. I think it's important to just spend a hot second talking about
yeah,
getting ready for sleep.
Which is
yes.
one of the most important things that you can do for your health, by the way.
Totally. And also another favorite of mine, my bed just happens to be against the wall, is laying on my back and legs up the wall. So it's kind of that, letting the blood flow back down towards the heart, but also it just is again kind of arms out, just kind of letting go and receiving. But yeah, we just send these little cues to our bodies that, now is a time to wind down, getting rid of, or not getting rid of, but definitely limiting the amount of blue light, whether it be on computers, smartphones, before bed.
Mhm.
That Ariana Huffington talks a lot about sleep kind of revolution and like what she's working towards. And hearing her speak, she's encouraged me to say that my phone does not live in my bedroom. It has its own little night spot in my living room. And that's been a great ritual too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if you're watching the video, I have like these crazy, awesome, brand new blue blockers. And they make my eyes
Yeah.
look all red. It's pretty neat.
Well, Landra, before we wrap things up, I just want to thank you again for taking time out of your very busy schedule to come on our podcast. And we would be honored if you would just do a very short meditation for our listeners, just to kind of give them a preview of what your company and what you have to offer. And before we do that, can you just let us all know where we can find out more information about you?
Yeah, absolutely. You can go to my website, which is mindfulhr.com. My email literally is landra@mindfulhr.com.
Awesome. All right. Well, I think we should drop in right now. I'm
Love it.
feeling ready. And yeah, thank you again so much. We have had just a blast talking with you about all things mindfulness and meditation. So I hope everyone enjoys this beautiful meditation by Landra.
All right. So looks like you're both seated. I would say find a comfortable way of being. You might kind of, rock side to side until you eventually find sense of equilibrium in your own body. And you can close your eyes or you can just softly focus your gaze on one thing. And noticing your feet touching the ground, all the points of contact of your body and the chair. And then take a couple of deep breaths, inhaling through the nostrils and exhaling, slowly releasing. And just allow your breath to return to its own natural rhythm. And then bringing awareness to your physical body and just get a sense if there's any way or place you might be holding tension. And give yourself permission to relax your muscles. Sensing your shoulder blades melting down and back. Might even invite the next breath to be received in a softening belly. There's nothing to do and nowhere to be, but just to notice this moment. So you might be aware of the temperature of the room on your skin. Or maybe you notice a particular scent that fills the room. And drawing your awareness to your heart center, and you might imagine taking some deeper, fuller breaths from that space. And just checking in and noticing what it is that matters the most to you in this moment. Breathing in gratitude for making time in your day just to be, just to receive. Allow your eyes to open and just take your time as you re-enter your space, noticing what you see around you, maybe even taking a stretch.
Wow, I must have been very busy today because I dropped right in.
Nice. That was 4 minutes. So you
That was a record.
Is that a crystal bowl, by the way?
it is a gosh, what is it, like a singing bowl? Oops, here we go.
It's Tibetan bowl.
The Tibetan
yeah.
bowl.
Oh, it's a
Yeah,
Tibetan.
yeah. It's a
That is
beautiful resonance.
my favorite part of class. It's just I don't. There's something about the sounds and the vibration. It just resonates with me, I guess.
That's the one thing I didn't mention. Lately, when I'm finding any sort of resistance to my practice, I've been doing meditations with sound. Like a sound bath.
Yeah.
That is like, because like Rachel, what you were speaking with about that energy, those vibrations through the body. It's my favorite way lately, actually, to practice.
Actually, when I work in my office here, I'll always ding the bowl before, because I have a Tibetan bowl as well from like this fabulous
Nice.
island where I live. And sometimes this might sound a bit woo to some people, but maybe not to others. When you have different bowls, you then sing to that frequency. But yeah, I've been diving a ton into music, getting back into my, playing guitar and getting back into our instruments. I feel like is something that, like, I've been playing guitar since I was 10, but you end up taking these hiatuses from these instruments that we've been playing for so long. And I just love to encourage everyone who's listening that if you have played an instrument before in the past and it made you feel good, do more of that. Do it again.
Yeah.
Right? Make time for it.
Well, and also the great effects it has too on our brain, playing music. And like you said, you remembered it from the past. It's there. Got to bring it back.
Yeah. Well, this has been such a pleasure. And I thank you so much for all that you're doing for the meditation community. And we'll be sure to include links for our listeners on how to find you. And yeah, thank you again so much, Landra.
Yeah, thank you both so very much. It was a pleasure speaking with you and being a part of your podcast.